34 weeks pregnant, and found dead in her living room. Who could have done this? Picture the scene: a typical Saturday afternoon, Elmfield Walk in Donaghadee. At exactly 2:15, Peace-Nye officers and paramedics burst through the door of a modest terraced house. Inside, they discover Sarah Montgomery, 27, mother of two, heavily pregnant, unconscious, and life drained from her. No time for hesitation. The house is sealed. Evidence is bagged. Then, less than an hour later, and just a stone's throw away, a 28-year-old man from Belfast is quietly led in cuffs into a police van. The tension is electric. Did he know her? Was it domestic? What connects him to Sarah? The man arrested wasn't some faceless stranger. His name is Zak Hughes, age 28, a resident of Argeland Place, Belfast. When detectives brought him in for questioning, there was no public outburst, no resistance, just silence. Zak wasn't unknown to Sarah. In fact, sources say he had been in her orbit for some time. Their connection wasn't accidental. It was personal, ongoing, and possibly volatile. When he stood before a judge at Newtownards Magistrates Court, Zak wore a grey tracksuit and showed no emotion. No plea, no words beyond confirming his name. But the charges? They were loud enough: murder and child destruction. A man now behind bars, facing two of the most serious charges possible. And yet, still no one truly knows what happened in that house. The timeline is tight. On the morning of Saturday, June 29th, neighbors heard nothing unusual. No screams, no arguments, just silence. But by early afternoon, Sarah Montgomery was gone. She had been 34 weeks pregnant, preparing for the arrival of her third child. Her two young daughters were safe, but Sarah was found unresponsive in the living room, with signs that something violent had taken place. Paramedics tried to revive her, but it was too late. The scene inside the house told its own story, one that detectives believed pointed clearly to foul play. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a break-in. Whatever happened, it happened behind closed doors, and someone Sarah likely knew and trusted had been there. By the time Sarah's body was taken from her home, the investigation had already shifted into high gear. But the charge that came next stunned even seasoned crime reporters. Zak Hughes wasn't just charged with murder. He was also charged with child destruction, a rare but deeply serious charge under Northern Irish law. It applies when someone causes the death of a viable unborn child, and Sarah's baby was only weeks away from birth. This wasn't a single homicide. It was two lives, both taken, both counted. In the courtroom, the prosecution made it clear this wasn't an accident or a tragic misunderstanding. This was intentional, deliberate, the kind of case that shakes an entire country, especially one still reckoning with its history of violence against women. On the morning of Tuesday, July 2nd, the small courtroom in Newtownards was tense. Zak Hughes stood before the judge, his expression unreadable. No family spoke on his behalf. No lawyers argued for bail. Instead, the prosecution laid out just enough to justify what was coming: a full murder trial. The judge, Conor Heaney, didn't hesitate. He ordered Zak Hughes remanded into custody with no option for bail. His next court appearance was scheduled for Tuesday, July 30th. No plea, no defense, just silence and the weight of two lives lost. Outside, Sarah's loved ones waited quietly. Some held photos, others cried. The sense of justice, beginning but far from finished, was in the air. Behind the calm words of charged and remanded, there's a storm of evidence building, but so far the public only sees the surface. During the court hearing, a Peace-Nye detective chief inspector confirmed to the judge that police have evidence linking Zak Hughes directly to the crime. But what that evidence is: fingerprints, Witness statements, forensic analysis remains locked away behind closed doors. That's not unusual. In fact, it's strategic. Because this isn't just a murder case, it's a case involving a pregnant mother, an unborn child, and possibly domestic violence, which means investigators are walking a tightrope. They can't risk contaminating the trial or tipping off anyone else involved. But what we do know is this: there were no signs of forced entry, no obvious struggle reported by neighbors, and no mention of a break in, which leads detectives and likely prosecutors to believe that Sarah let her killer in. Was it Zak Hughes? Did an argument escalate into something fatal? Was it planned, personal, or was this a sudden outburst of deadly violence? Detectives are also sifting through Sarah's phone records, Hughes's digital footprint, and any surveillance footage from the area. In cases like this, it's often not what the killer said, it's what the technology proves. What's more chilling is the charge of child destruction. That suggests prosecutors believed the baby was alive and had a chance at survival until the moment Sarah died. It adds a layer of heartbreak that turns this case from one death into two. The silence around the evidence is loud, and it tells us one thing clearly: this case is only just beginning. Sarah Montgomery wasn't a headline. She was a 27-year-old mother, known and loved in her coastal town of Donaghadee. She had two little girls who depended on her, and she was just weeks away from giving birth to her third child when her life was violently cut short. Friends described her as gentle, loyal, and the kind of mother who never stopped smiling when her kids were around. She had been excited about her pregnancy, posting updates, shopping for baby clothes, and preparing a home for her growing family. This was supposed to be a season of hope, not mourning. That's what makes her murder feel so personal to the community. People didn't just lose a neighbor, they lost a young woman at the peak of her life, and an unborn child whose name would never be known. After news broke of the arrest, local residents held a candlelight vigil just steps from her home. Strangers left flowers, handwritten notes, and teddy bears. Someone taped a message to a lamppost that read, "You deserved safety. You deserved life." Her death has sparked renewed anger and grief throughout Northern Ireland. Over 25 women have been killed in the region in the last 5 years, many of them by men they knew. Politicians have called for better protections, while women's advocacy groups are demanding changes to domestic violence protocols and earlier interventions. And through all this noise, Sarah's name keeps echoing. Because she wasn't just a statistic. She was a mother, a daughter, a soon-to-be mom again, and whatever happened in that living room, it wasn't just a crime, it was a breaking point. And for her killer, whoever he truly is, justice is coming, one court date at a time.